Stephen Gallagher believed he had found not just a romantic partner, but a shared mission building a health clinic to serve Manila's poor communities. But when he arrived in the Philippines in November 2024, surprised the woman he planned to marry, the address she had given him led to an abandoned lot in a rundown neighborhood. His $600,000 investment had disappeared into untraceable accounts, and every phone number and email address associated with Angelica Domingo returned error messages as if she had never existed. Steve stood on the vacant lot, holding printed construction progress photos that supposedly showed the clinic's development over the past year. He compared the photos to the reality before him: overgrown weeds, piles of garbage, no sign that construction had ever occurred. Neighbors he approached claimed they knew nothing about any clinic project. The address Angelica had listed as the clinic's legal registration led to a residential building whose occupants had never heard of her or any medical facility. He tried calling her number for the 100th time that day. The automated message in Tagalog meant nothing to him, but he understood its meaning: disconnected, unreachable, gone. He opened his banking app and stared at the account balance that read $2,300, all that remained of the $625,000 he had brought to the Philippines to fund their shared dream and their shared future. But this story does not begin with an abandoned lot and a shattered dream. It begins 14 months earlier, in a Denver condo where a recently divorced IT consultant posted on LinkedIn about wanting to mentor emerging entrepreneurs in developing countries, and received a message that would cost him everything he had spent 30 years building. Stephen Gallagher's divorce was finalized in September 2023, after a marriage that had been slowly deteriorating for a decade. His wife, Rebecca, had filed, citing irreconcilable differences that translated into reality as Steve worked too much, prioritized his business over their relationship, and had become emotionally distant over years of grinding startup culture. The divorce was expensive but relatively clean. Steve's software consulting company, a firm he had built from nothing over 15 years, specializing in custom database solutions for healthcare providers, was sold as part of the settlement. The sale price was substantial: $2.8 million. After asset division, debt settlement, legal fees, and tax implications, Steve walked away with approximately $1.4 million, the Denver condo they had purchased 5 years earlier, and the profound emptiness of starting over at 57. Steve kept working initially, taking contract IT consulting jobs to maintain structure and purpose, but the work felt hollow after running his own company. Being an independent contractor rather than a CEO diminished him. The technical challenges that once energized him now felt repetitive and meaningless. His social circle had evaporated with the divorce. The couples they had socialized with awkwardly chose sides or simply stopped inviting him to gatherings. His adult daughter, Emily, 28 and living in Seattle, maintained dutiful contact but was absorbed in her own career and relationships. Steve had colleagues rather than friends, professional connections rather than genuine relationships. By early 2024, Steve was considering early retirement. At 57, with $1.4 million in assets, he could live comfortably if he was strategic about expenses and perhaps supplemented with occasional consulting work. But retirement to what? Sitting alone in his Denver condo watching television? Playing golf with other divorced men discussing their regrets? Steve began researching alternatives. He had always been drawn to entrepreneurship and mentorship, and he wondered if there were opportunities to leverage his business experience in emerging markets where Western expertise was valued but expensive. He joined several LinkedIn groups focused on international entrepreneurship, impact investing, and social enterprise in developing countries. In March 2024, Steve posted on LinkedIn, "Recently sold my healthcare IT consulting firm after 15 years, considering how to spend the next chapter meaningfully. Interested in mentoring startups in developing countries, particularly in healthcare, tech, or social enterprise. If you're building something meaningful and could use strategic guidance, let's connect." The post received modest engagement, a few dozen likes, several comments from people offering congratulations or sharing their own transition stories. But one response stood out. A woman named Angelica Domingo sent a direct message. "Hello, Mr. Gallagher. Your post really inspired me. I'm a medical student in Manila, Philippines, in my final year. I've been planning to open a community health clinic in an underserved area after graduation, but I struggle with the business side, how to structure it sustainably, how to manage operations, how to scale impact. Would you be willing to provide some guidance? I would be incredibly grateful for any advice you could share. Respectfully, Angelica. Steve clicked on her profile. Angelica appeared to be in her early 30s, with a professional headshot showing her in medical scrubs. Her profile listed her as studying at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila, with connections to various healthcare and medical groups. Her posts were a mix of medical education content, motivational quotes, and photos from what appeared to be community health outreach events. Everything about the profile suggested legitimacy. It was not a new account with few connections, but an established presence with over 800 connections and a history of professional engagement. Steve responded, "Hi, Angelica. Thanks for reaching out. I'd be happy to discuss your clinic plans. Community healthcare is exactly the kind of impact work I'm interested in supporting. Let's schedule a call to talk about your vision and how I might help. Best, Steve." They arranged a video call for the following week. When the call connected, Angelica appeared exactly as her profile suggested: professional, articulate, genuinely enthusiastic about her clinic concept. She explained her vision: a small clinic in Tondo, one of Manila's poorest districts, providing basic healthcare services at minimal cost to families who could not afford private hospitals or even public hospital fees. "The need is enormous," Angelica explained, her passion evident. "Families go into debt for simple medical care. Children miss school because treatable infections go untreated. Pregnant women deliver at home because they can't afford hospital fees. A well-run community clinic could serve thousands of people who currently have almost no access to care." Steve was moved by her vision and impressed by her thoughtfulness. She had researched the regulatory requirements, identified potential locations, developed preliminary budgets, and articulated clear metrics for success. This was not just idealistic dreaming, but serious social entrepreneurship. They began talking regularly initially about the clinic concept, but gradually expanding to broader discussions about healthcare, social enterprise, their personal backgrounds. Angelica shared her story. She had grown up poor in Tondo herself, had been the first in her family to attend university, and felt enormous responsibility to give back to the community that had supported her education through scholarships and family sacrifice. Steve shared his own story: the divorce, the company sale, his desire to do something meaningful rather than just exist in comfortable retirement. He found Angelica easy to talk to, intellectually stimulating, and genuinely committed to making a difference. Over the following weeks, their conversations shifted from purely professional to personal. Angelica would ask about Steve's day, his interests, his feelings about his divorce. Steve found himself sharing more than he had with anyone in years: his loneliness, his sense that his career success had been hollow, his fear that he would spend his remaining years without genuine connection or purpose. "You sound like someone who has everything but feels like he has nothing," Angelica observed during one call. "I understand that feeling. Sometimes success in one area makes you realize everything else is empty." Steve felt seen in a way he had not experienced since the early years of his marriage. And Angelica, despite being nearly 30 years younger and from a completely different background, seemed to genuinely understand him. In May 2024, their relationship crossed from professional mentorship to personal connection. Angelica mentioned casually that she was not seeing anyone romantically. Her medical studies and clinic planning consumed all her time and energy. Steve admitted he was also single and uncertain whether he even wanted to pursue dating at his age after such a painful divorce. "Age is just a number when two people connect intellectually and emotionally," Angelica said carefully. "I'm not saying anything inappropriate. I just mean that meaningful connection is rare at any age or circumstance." Steve felt his pulse quicken. Was she suggesting romantic interest? Or was he reading too much into a kind comment? Over the next 2 weeks, their video calls became more frequent and more personal. They began calling each other not just to discuss the clinic, but simply to talk, to share their days, to enjoy each other's company. Angelica would call Steve late at night, her time, morning his time, before she went to sleep, and they would talk for hours. "I need to be honest with you," Angelica said during a June call. "I've developed feelings for you that go beyond mentorship or friendship. I know it's complicated, the age difference, the distance, but I can't help how I feel. You make me feel understood and valued in ways I've never experienced. I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable by telling you this." Steve's heart raced. "You're not making me uncomfortable. I feel the same way. I've been afraid to say anything because I didn't want to be that older guy pursuing a younger woman inappropriately." "There's nothing inappropriate about two adults who care about each other," Angelica said softly. "The question is whether we want to explore this or let it stay as friendship." "I want to explore it," Steve said without hesitation. They began dating virtually video calls every evening, constant messaging throughout the day, developing the intimacy and connection of a committed relationship despite never having met in person. Angelica sent photos of her daily life studying at coffee shops, attending medical rotations, spending time with family. Steve shared his days too, his consulting work, his walks around Denver, his gradual acceptance that he was in a relationship with someone he had never physically met but felt closer to than anyone in years. Steve Gallagher's story exposes how professional scammers exploit not just loneliness, but purpose, how they identify successful people searching for meaning and construct elaborate frauds that promise both love and legacy. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to our channel for more investigations into sophisticated romance fraud, investment scams, and the devastating cost of trusting without verification. Your awareness could protect you or someone you care about from similar destruction. Through July and August 2024, Steve and Angelica's relationship deepened, while simultaneously, the clinic project became more concrete and urgent. Angelica was approaching her medical degree completion in October, and she wanted to launch the clinic by January 2025, but financing remained the primary obstacle. "I've applied for grants and microloans," Angelica explained during a late July video call, "but the amounts are too small and the approval process is too slow. To open properly with basic equipment, supplies, initial staffing, I need approximately 3 million pesos startup capital. That's about $54,000. Steve had been thinking about this. He wanted to support Angel. He had started calling her Angel, and she called him Love or sometimes Babe. More than emotional support, he wanted to invest in her dream materially. He had resources. She had vision and commitment. Together, they could build something meaningful. "What if I invested?" Steve proposed. "Not as a loan, but as a partner. We structure it properly, you handle medical operations, I provide business strategy and initial capital. We're building this together." Angel was quiet for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Steve, I can't ask you to do that. $54,000 is enormous money. What if the clinic fails? What if something goes wrong? I couldn't live with myself if you lost your investment. You're not asking, I'm offering. And Angel, I'm not just investing in a clinic, I'm investing in us, in our future together. This isn't charity or mentorship anymore. This is two partners building something. Are you sure?" Angel's eyes were shining with what appeared to be tears. "This would change everything. We could actually do this. Serve hundreds of families. Make real impact." "I'm sure," Steve said with certainty. "Let's build this together." They spent the next 2 weeks developing detailed plans. Angel identified a property available for lease in Tondo, a 2-story building, suitable for conversion to a clinic, available for approximately 20,000 pesos monthly rent, about $360. She connected Steve via video to a local architect who specialized in medical facility conversions, who provided preliminary renovation cost estimates. Steve hired an international lawyer specializing in Philippine business law to advise on structure. The lawyer explained that foreign ownership of Philippine businesses was restricted. Foreigners could own up to 40% in most sectors, with Filipinos required to hold 60%. For a medical clinic, Filipino majority ownership was mandatory, since healthcare was a restricted sector. The standard structure, the lawyer explained, is for the Filipino partner to hold nominal 60% ownership while having contractual agreements about profit distribution, decision-making, and the foreign investor's rights. It's not ideal from an asset protection standpoint, but it's the only legal option for foreign investment in restricted sectors. Steve understood the risks. He would be investing his money in an entity controlled by Angel. If the relationship failed or if Angel proved untrustworthy, he would have limited recourse. But Steve had spent 30 years building a successful business through calculated risks. This felt like a worthy risk, investing in impact work with a partner he trusted. "Let's do it right," Steve told Angel. "Full legal documentation, clear agreements about operations and finances, regular reporting. I trust you completely, but good business practice protects both of us." In early September 2024, Steve wired $54,000 to a Philippine bank account Angel had opened specifically for the clinic. Angel provided comprehensive documentation, lease agreements for the property, contracts with the architect and contractors, licenses and permits applications, business registration papers showing Community Health Partners Incorporated, with Angel holding 60% ownership and Steve 40%. Everything appeared legitimate and professional. Angel sent regular updates, photos of the property before renovation, meetings with contractors, progress on permits. Steve felt pride and excitement watching their shared vision move from concept to reality. But $54,000 was just the beginning. As renovation progressed, Angel reported various unexpected expenses. The building's electrical system required complete replacement, 40,000 pesos, approximately $720. Plumbing needed upgrading, another 35,000 pesos. Local officials required facilitation fees for expedited permit processing, 50,000 pesos. Each expense was documented with photos, invoices, and receipts. Steve sent additional money each time, 2,000 here, 1,500 there. By late September, Steve had sent approximately $68,000 total, 14,000 beyond the initial budget. "I'm so sorry about the overages," Angel said during a video call, visibly stressed. Construction always costs more than estimated, especially in the Philippines where everything is informal and unpredictable. "But Steve, the clinic is taking shape. It's actually happening." Steve saw the stress on Angel's face and wanted to reassure her. "It's okay. These things happen in any construction project. We're building something important. The cost overruns are manageable." In October, Angel completed her medical degree with honors. She sent Steve a photo of herself in graduation regalia, beaming with pride, holding her diploma. Steve felt enormous pride in her achievement and gratitude that he was part of her journey. "I couldn't have done this without you," Angel told him during their celebration call. "Not just the money, the emotional support, the belief in me, the partnership. You've given me everything." "You've given me something too," Steve replied. "Purpose, connection, a reason to wake up excited rather than dreading another empty day. You saved me, Angel." With her degree complete, Angel could now focus entirely on the clinic launch. But additional needs emerged. Medical equipment was expensive. Examination tables, diagnostic tools, pharmacy supplies, basic surgical instruments for minor procedures. Angel provided detailed equipment lists with pricing from Manila medical suppliers. "The total is approximately 180,000 pesos, Angel explained. "About $3,200 for essential equipment to open. We can add more sophisticated equipment later as revenue grows." Steve sent the money. Then there were initial supply costs, medications, bandages, gloves, basic consumables, another $4,000. Then staffing costs. Angel needed to hire a nurse and a receptionist before opening, and Philippine labor law required first month's salary and security deposits, another $3,500. By early November 2024, Steve had sent approximately $85,000. The clinic was supposedly complete and scheduled to open mid-November. Angel sent photos showing a finished facility, clean examination rooms, waiting area with chairs, a small pharmacy area, signage reading Community Health Partners Clinic. "It's done, Steve," Angel said during a video call, her camera showing the completed clinic. "We did it. We actually built something real that will help so many people." Steve felt overwhelming pride and satisfaction. He had invested his money wisely, in something meaningful, with a partner he loved. This was redemption proof that his divorce and his years of lonely work had led somewhere worthwhile. But Angel had one more request before the grand opening. "Steve, I know I've already asked for so much money, but I need to be honest about one final thing. To legally operate, the clinic needs working capital reserve. The government requires proof that we have 6 months of operating expenses in reserve before they'll issue the final medical facility license. It's about 350,000 pesos, roughly $6,300. I don't have it, and I'm terrified we'll get this close and then not be able to open legally." Steve had already invested 85,000. Another 6,300 to ensure everything was legal and operational seemed reasonable, less than 8% of his total liquid assets. "I'll send it tomorrow. We're not going to let bureaucracy stop us now." The money was sent. The clinic supposedly received its final license. The grand opening was scheduled for November 20th, 2024. Angel suggested Steve should come to the Philippines for the opening, to see their achievement in person, to meet her family properly, to celebrate together. "I'll book a flight," Steve said immediately. "I want to be there. I want to see what we built." "No, let me arrange everything," Angel insisted. "I know the best hotels, the best flights, the best way to navigate Manila. Let me plan your trip as my gift to you for everything you've done." Steve agreed, touched by her desire to reciprocate his generosity. Angel sent him an itinerary. He would arrive November 18th, stay in a hotel she recommended near the clinic, attend the grand opening on the 20th, and spend a week touring the Philippines with her. Steve told his daughter Emily about the trip during their weekly phone call. Emily's response was immediate concern. "Dad, have you actually verified any of this? Have you seen legal documents? Talked to the lawyer in person? Confirmed the clinic actually exists?" "I've seen photos, videos, documentation," Steve replied defensively. "Angel wouldn't lie to me. We're building something together. Dad, please at least hire someone local to verify the clinic exists before you go. This sounds like a scam." "You don't understand," Steve said, frustration creeping into his voice. "This isn't some random internet woman asking for money. This is my partner. Someone I've known for 8 months, talked to daily, built a relationship with. Your concern is based on stereotypes about Asian women and older Western men." The conversation ended tensely. Emily was unconvinced. Steve was offended that his daughter doubted his judgment. Steve departed Denver on November 16th, 2024, flying to Manila via connections in Los Angeles and Tokyo. The flights were long, nearly 24 hours of travel, but Steve felt excitement rather than exhaustion. He was finally going to meet Angel in person, see their clinic, and begin the next chapter of his life. He arrived at Ninoy Aquino International Airport in Manila on November 18th in the early evening. Angel had said she would meet him at the airport, but as Steve emerged from customs, he did not see her in the arrivals area. He tried calling her number. It rang but went to voicemail. He sent WhatsApp messages. They showed as delivered but not read. Steve waited for 90 minutes, growing increasingly concerned. Finally, a text came through. "So sorry. Family emergency with my mother. Had to rush to province. Please take taxi to Hotel Imperial Manila on Roxas Boulevard. I paid for your room already. Key waiting at front desk under your name. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. So sorry for this terrible first impression." Steve was disappointed but understanding. Emergencies happened. He took a taxi to the hotel, a mid-range place along Manila Bay, exactly as Angel had described. The front desk did have a reservation under his name, already paid through November 25th. He checked in, showered, and waited for Angel's call. The call came at 11 p.m. Angel sounded distressed, explaining that her mother had suffered a minor stroke and she was at a provincial hospital several hours outside Manila managing the situation. "I'm so sorry, Steve. The timing is terrible. Can you wait in Manila for 2 days while I handle this? I'll be back by the 20th for the grand opening. I promise. Please don't be angry." "I'm not angry," Steve assured her. "Family comes first. Take care of your mother. I'll explore Manila and we'll meet in 2 days." Over the next 2 days, Steve toured Manila as a tourist, visiting Intramuros, Rizal Park, various shopping malls and markets. But his real focus was anticipation of November 20th, the clinic opening, meeting Angel in person, seeing their accomplishment. November 20th arrived. Steve dressed nicely and took a taxi to the address Angel had provided for the clinic, a location in Tondo she had described as challenging to reach, but worth the effort to serve the community there. The taxi driver looked confused when Steve gave the address but drove toward Tondo. The neighborhood deteriorated as they approached from commercial areas to increasingly dense residential streets, from maintained roads to narrow alleys. Finally, the driver stopped on a street that did not match any of Angel's photos or videos. "This is address," the driver said. Steve looked around. The location was a vacant lot, surrounded by informal housing makeshift structures, unpaved streets, no sign of any medical facility or construction site. "Are you sure this is right?" Steve asked. The driver checked his GPS again. "Yes, sir. This is address you give." Steve got out of the taxi, his confusion transforming to dread. He showed Angel's clinic photos to nearby residents, asking in English if they knew where the clinic was located. Most did not understand him, but one young man who spoke some English translated Steve's questions to neighbors. "No clinic here," the young man finally reported. "People say no construction in this area recent. Maybe you have wrong address?" Steve tried calling Angel. The number was disconnected, not going to voicemail, but producing an error message. He tried her WhatsApp. The messages were not delivering. He tried her email, returned as undeliverable. Steve stood on the vacant lot, the full weight of reality crashing down on him. There was no clinic. There had never been a clinic. The photos, the videos, the documentation all fabricated. Angel, if that was even her real name, had been extracting his money over 8 months, building an elaborate fiction, and had disappeared the moment he arrived to verify anything in person. $91,000. Gone. Sent to accounts he could not trace, for a business that never existed, to a woman who had never been real. Steve returned to his hotel in a state of shock and denial. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Angel had given him the wrong address. Maybe the clinic was at a different location. Maybe her mother's emergency was real, and she was still dealing with it and would contact him soon with clarification. He spent the evening trying every method of contact he could think of. He searched for the business registration information she had sent him, Community Health Partners Incorporated. Online searches revealed nothing. He tried the architect she had supposedly hired. The LinkedIn profile existed, but when Steve sent a message, it bounced back as a fake account. He called the phone numbers on the invoices and receipts she had sent, all disconnected or fake. By midnight, Steve could no longer deny reality. He had been scammed, systematically, thoroughly, and sophisticatedly. Every element of Angel's story had been fabricated. The medical degree from University of Santo Tomas. He called the university the next day and confirmed no one by that name had graduated recently. The clinic property, the renovation, the equipment purchases, all fiction designed to extract his money while making him feel like a partner in something meaningful rather than a victim of fraud. Steve contacted the Philippine National Police. 2 officers took his report at the Tondo precinct, with expressions suggesting this was not an unfamiliar story. Through limited English and a translator, Steve explained everything: the LinkedIn contact, the 8-month relationship, the clinic investment, the $91,000 transferred. "You have what documentation?" one officer asked. Steve showed everything: printouts of chat logs, copies of wire transfer receipts, the fake business registration documents, photos of the supposed clinic. The officers examined the materials and consulted with each other in Tagalog. "This is organized scam," the officer finally said. "Woman probably not named Angelica Domingo. Photos may be stolen from real person, maybe actress hired to make videos. Very sophisticated operation. They target foreign businessmen with money and desire to do good work." "Can you investigate? Can you trace the money?" Steve asked desperately. "We will file, report, and investigate. But realistic money probably moved through many accounts, probably already out of Philippines. Woman probably using different identity now, targeting different victim. Recovery very unlikely." The officers were sympathetic but clear. Steve's chances of getting his money back were essentially zero. Steve contacted the American Embassy. A consular officer listened to his story with professional compassion but limited ability to help. The embassy could not intervene in local business disputes or fraud cases. They could only provide resources, lists of lawyers, advice about reporting to U.S. authorities, information about support services. "This happens more often than people realize," the consular officer told Steve. "Sophisticated scammers targeting expats and foreigners with money. They study their targets carefully, create elaborate fictions, extract maximum money before disappearing. You're not the first American to lose significant money this way in the Philippines, and unfortunately you won't be the last." Steve hired a Manila lawyer specializing in fraud cases. The consultation cost $500 and provided little hope. Without Angel's real identity, without access to the accounts where money was sent, without any verifiable trail beyond fake documents and a LinkedIn profile that had now been deleted, there was virtually nothing to pursue legally. "I'm sorry," the lawyer said. "The people who do these scams are professionals. They leave no actionable trail. The money is gone." Steve spent a week in Manila in a fog of denial and grief, slowly accepting the totality of his loss. $91,000, but more than money, his sense of reality had been shattered. For 8 months, he had believed he was in a meaningful relationship, building something important, connecting with a partner who valued him. All of it was fiction. Every conversation, every expression of love, every video call showing the clinic all carefully crafted lies designed to extract his wealth. He eventually returned to Denver, defeated and broke in ways that transcended finances. Back in Denver in early December 2024, Steve began assessing the full scope of his situation. He had brought $1.4 million to this chapter of his life after his divorce. He had now sent $91,000 to a scam, but the damage was actually worse than that single loss. The clinic fraud had consumed his attention and emotional energy for months, during which time Steve had largely stopped doing consulting work. His income had dropped to essentially zero while he focused on Angel and the clinic project. Additionally, the trip to Manila, flights, hotel, meals, miscellaneous expenses, had cost him approximately $6,000. Steve's total losses directly attributable to Angel were approximately $97,000. His remaining liquid assets were about $1.3 million. Substantial, but he had lost nearly 7% of his wealth to a scam. And more damaging, he had lost 8 months of earning potential, emotional stability, and faith in his own judgment. His daughter Emily was compassionate when Steve finally admitted what had happened, though he could hear the unspoken, "I told you so," in her carefully neutral responses. "Come stay with me for a while, Dad," she offered. "Get away from Denver. Be around family. Figure out your next steps." Steve declined. The humiliation of moving in with his daughter, admitting he could not manage his own life, felt unbearable. He maintained that he was fine, that he had learned a valuable lesson, that he would recover. But Steve was not fine. The betrayal triggered depression that manifested physically: insomnia, loss of appetite, persistent anxiety. He found himself obsessively reviewing every conversation with Angel, trying to identify the moment when he should have known, the red flag he had missed, the question he should have asked. In retrospect, the warning signs seemed obvious. Angel never wanted to video call from the actual clinic site, always from what she claimed was her home. She never introduced him to any medical school friends or colleagues. She never provided verifiable contact information for the architect or contractors. She pushed back whenever Steve suggested bringing in third-party verification or having his lawyer review detailed documentation. But in the moment, Steve had interpreted these things as cultural differences, as Angel's discomfort with his wealth and American business formality, as her desire to protect their intimate partnership from external scrutiny. He had wanted to trust, had desperately wanted the relationship and the project to be real, and that desire had overridden his business instincts. Steve tried to return to consulting work, but his heart was not in it. The technical work that once challenged him now felt pointless. He would sit at his computer, unable to focus, replaying Angel's voice, telling him she loved him, remembering her tears of gratitude when he sent money, recalling her excitement about serving poor communities through their clinic. All of it performance, all of it lies. She had been so good at it, the right mix of enthusiasm and reluctance, gratitude and independence, vulnerability and capability. She had made him feel valued, not just as a wallet, but as a partner, a mentor, a beloved. That was the real cruelty. She had given him exactly what he needed emotionally, while systematically robbing him. In January 2025, 3 months after the collapse, Steve received an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "I'm sorry for everything." He opened it with shaking hands. "Steve, I know you hate me. I understand why. I want you to know that some of what we shared was real for me. Your kindness, your vision, your desire to help these touched me. But I was part of something I couldn't escape. There were people I owed money to, people who would hurt my family if I didn't cooperate. I didn't want to hurt you. I'm sorry. Please move on with your life. You deserve happiness. A." Steve stared at the email, analyzing every word. Was this really from Angel? Was the story about owing money and being coerced true? Or was this another manipulation, designed to make him feel sympathy rather than rage, to discourage him from continuing to pursue justice? He replied immediately, "If you were coerced, help me recover the money. Tell me where it went. Provide evidence against whoever forced you. Otherwise, this email is just more lies." The email bounced back as undeliverable. The account had already been deleted. Through early 2025, Steve tried to rebuild his life from the emotional and financial wreckage Angel had created. He forced himself to return to consulting work, taking contracts that paid well enough to maintain his lifestyle but required minimal emotional investment. He attended therapy sessions with a psychologist specializing in fraud victims, trying to process the betrayal and shame. But the damage was not just about money. Steve had lost his capacity to trust not just romantic partners, but anyone. He found himself suspicious of friendly interactions, assuming ulterior motives, unable to accept kindness or interest at face value. Colleagues who invited him to lunch probably wanted something. Neighbors who made conversation probably had hidden agendas. His relationship with his daughter Emily remained strained by what they could not discuss directly: her validation that she had been right to warn him, his shame that he had ignored her concerns. They maintained dutiful contact, but the warmth and ease of their previous relationship was damaged. Steve stopped using social media entirely. LinkedIn, where Angel had first contacted him, was deleted along with Facebook and Instagram. He wanted no digital presence that might invite another scammer to identify him as a target. He withdrew into isolation work, home, occasional walks, minimal human contact. In March 2025, Steve sold his Denver condo. The real estate market had softened, and he received approximately $480,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage and closing costs. Combined with his remaining liquid investments, Steve now had approximately $1.7 million, still substantial, but $200,000 less than he had started with after the divorce. But Denver felt contaminated. Every street reminded him of the months when he believed he was building something meaningful with Angel. He could not stay in the city where he had been so catastrophically deceived. Steve decided to move to the Philippines. The decision seemed contradictory. Why return to the country where he had been scammed? But the Philippines offered something America did not: anonymous obscurity and a cost of living that would allow him to exist indefinitely on his remaining resources without needing to work. He settled in Cebu City, deliberately choosing a different city than Manila to avoid any possibility of accidentally encountering anyone connected to Angel's operation. He rented a modest one-bedroom apartment for 15,000 pesos monthly, approximately $270, and began the quiet, withdrawn existence of an expat who was not pursuing adventure or companionship, but simply trying to survive in the ruins of his own judgment. By mid-2025, Steve had established a minimal routine in Cebu. He took occasional remote consulting contracts, enough to supplement his investment income and provide structure to his days, but not enough to require significant emotional investment. He lived frugally, avoiding the expat social scene, maintaining isolation as both preference and protection. He joined an expat support group for fraud victims. The group met weekly at a Cebu coffee shop, and Steve found himself among 15 to 20 men with similar stories: substantial money, lost to romance scams, business frauds, real estate schemes. The stories varied in details but shared common structures. Isolation plus desperation plus skilled exploitation equals financial destruction. "The thing I can't get past," Steve told the group during one meeting, "is that I thought I was smart. I built a successful business from nothing. I understood risk assessment. I knew how to evaluate opportunities. But I walked into this with my eyes open because she gave me exactly what I needed psychologically." "That's how it works," the group facilitator responded. "These aren't random acts by amateur criminals. These are sophisticated operations run by people who study psychology and target selection. They identify what you need, whether it's companionship, purpose, validation, meaning, and they construct scenarios that provide exactly that while extracting your money. Intelligence doesn't protect you. Success doesn't protect you. Only skepticism protects you. And most of us weren't skeptical because we desperately wanted what they were selling to be real." Steve began sharing his story publicly, in expat forums, in fraud prevention groups, in warnings to newly arrived expats who seemed vulnerable to similar exploitation. His message was consistent: verify everything independently before investing anything. Never send money based on photos, documents, or video calls alone. Always hire local investigators to confirm physical locations and claimed identities. Never let emotional investment override business judgment. He estimated his warnings had reached thousands of people and directly prevented at least a dozen men from sending money to suspected scams. Several contacted him privately to thank him, explaining that his story had made them recognize red flags in their own situations: the reluctance to provide verifiable information, the professional-looking documents that could not be independently confirmed, The combination of romance and business opportunity that created perfect psychological manipulation. But prevention work could not undo Steve's own damage. His $97,000 loss was permanent. More significantly, his ability to trust himself, to pursue meaningful relationships, to take risks on connection or purpose, these had been destroyed. He existed in self-imposed exile, maintaining the absolute minimum of human contact necessary for survival. His daughter Emily visited in July 2025. She spent a week in Cebu, seeing her father's sparse apartment, meeting his support group friends, understanding the reality of his diminished life. The visit was emotionally difficult. Emily saw how much her father had aged, how defeated he seemed, how the vitality and confidence she remembered had been replaced by caution and withdrawal. "Come back to Seattle," Emily urged. "Live near me. Be part of your granddaughter's life. Stop punishing yourself by staying in the country where this happened." "I'm not punishing myself," Steve replied. "I'm just surviving. In Seattle, I'd need to work full-time to afford living. Here, I can exist on my investments and minimal consulting. It's not punishment, it's practicality. It looks like punishment from where I'm standing. You're isolating yourself, refusing connection, existing rather than living. Maybe that's all I'm capable of now," Steve said quietly. "She didn't just take my money, Emily. She took the part of me that believed in things, that could hope, that could trust. I can't get that back." Emily left Cebu frustrated and sad, recognizing that her father had been fundamentally changed by the betrayal in ways that geography could not fix. Through late 2025 and into 2026, Steve became increasingly active in fraud prevention advocacy. He wrote detailed posts analyzing the specific tactics Angel had used, how she established credibility through LinkedIn rather than dating sites, how she built months of relationship before introducing financial requests, how she combined romance with seemingly legitimate business opportunity, how she used professional documentation and progress photos to create verification illusion. "The clinic scam is particularly effective," Steve wrote in one widely shared forum post, "because it appeals to multiple psychological vulnerabilities simultaneously. You're not just giving money to a girlfriend, you're investing in a business, serving poor communities, building legacy, partnering with someone who shares your values. The romance makes you want to trust. The business framework makes you feel like you're being smart and strategic. The humanitarian mission makes you feel noble. It's brilliant psychological manipulation." Steve was interviewed by several YouTube channels focused on expat fraud prevention. His story, the sophisticated LinkedIn approach, the medical clinic premise, the $600,000 total loss, when including all transfers, resonated widely. One video featuring his interview received over 500,000 views and thousands of comments from people sharing similar experiences or thanking Steve for the warning. But Steve also received cruel comments, accusations that he was a sex tourist who got what he deserved, that he was stupid for trusting an Asian woman, that his loss was karma for being a sexpat. Steve read these comments without responding, absorbing the cruelty as part of his penance. In April 2026, Steve received a message through an expat forum from someone claiming to be another victim of the same scam network. The man, an Australian named Peter, explained that he had lost 85,000 Australian dollars to a woman named Gabriela Santos, who claimed to be building a similar community health clinic in Davao City. "The approach was identical to what you described," Peter wrote. "LinkedIn contact, months of relationship building, clinic concept that appealed to my desire to do meaningful work, professional documentation, progress photos. The only difference was the city and her fake name. I think we were scammed by the same operation." Steve and Peter compared notes and discovered disturbing similarities. Some of the same architectural drawings had been sent to both of them, some of the same equipment invoices, even some of the same supposed contractor names. They were clearly victims of the same organized network using the same playbook with different personas. "The police told me recovery is impossible," Peter said during a video call. "But if there are multiple victims, maybe there's enough evidence to actually investigate the network rather than individual cases." Steve and Peter connected with 3 other men through various channels, all victims of similar medical clinic investment scams in the Philippines, all losing between $50,000 and $150,000, all approached through LinkedIn by professional-appearing women claiming medical backgrounds. They compiled their evidence and presented it to the Philippine National Police Cybercrime Division, to the American Embassy, to Interpol. The response was sympathetic but ultimately ineffective. The scammers used sophisticated money laundering, multiple fake identities, and operated across jurisdictions in ways that made prosecution nearly impossible without enormous resources that law enforcement was unwilling to commit. "We appreciate the information," a PNP, cybercrime officer, told Steve during a meeting. "This helps us understand the network's methods. But without the actual perpetrators identified with real names and locations, we cannot prosecute. The LinkedIn profiles were fake, the women's identities were fake, the businesses never existed. There is nothing tangible to pursue." The 5 victims created a website documenting their experiences, photos of the fake women, copies of the fraudulent documents, detailed descriptions of the approach tactics. They titled it, "The Clinic Scam, Warning for Expats," and promoted it through expat communities. The site received thousands of views and generated numerous contacts from other potential victims who recognized elements of the scam in their own experiences. But the satisfaction of prevention work could not compensate for permanent loss. Steve's $600,000, the rounded figure he used publicly, combining the $97,000 sent to Angel with other investments and expenses, remained gone. His emotional capacity to trust remained shattered. His life remained diminished. Steve Gallagher is now 59 years old, living in a modest Cebu City apartment, surviving on investment income and occasional remote consulting work. The $1.4 million he brought to his post-divorce life has been reduced to approximately $1,130,000 gone to the scam, divorce settlement discrepancies, poor investment decisions made while distracted by Angel, and the accumulated costs of relocating and rebuilding. He never recovered any of the money sent to Angelica Domingo, whose real identity remains unknown. The LinkedIn profile was deleted immediately after Steve arrived in Manila. The phone numbers and email addresses were all temporary and untraceable. The business registration documents were sophisticated forgeries. The photos and videos of the clinic were either stock footage or recordings of a real medical facility unconnected to Angel. Steve has not attempted another romantic relationship. The betrayal destroyed his capacity for vulnerability and trust in ways that therapy has been unable to repair. He maintains a few friendships within the expat support group, but always at emotional distance, always with protective barriers preventing genuine intimacy. His relationship with his daughter Emily has stabilized into dutiful contact without the warmth of their previous connection. She calls monthly, visits annually, and has largely accepted that her father will not return to America or rebuild the life he once had. She grieves for the vital, confident man her father used to be, recognizing that the man now exists only in memories. But Steve has found purpose in prevention and education. His website, his forum posts, his YouTube interviews, and his personal counseling of potential victims have created impact he measures in lives not destroyed, rather than money recovered. He estimates his warnings have prevented at least 30 men from losing money to suspected clinic scams or similar investment frauds. "I can't undo what happened to me," Steve tells people he counsels. "I can't recover my money or my ability to trust, but I can make sure others understand what these scams look like before they lose everything. That's the only redemption available to me now." When asked if he regrets moving to the Philippines after being scammed there, Steve's answer is complex. "I don't regret seeking connection and purpose. Those are legitimate human needs. I regret not verifying independently. I regret letting my desire for meaning override my business judgment. I regret trusting professional documentation without third-party confirmation. But the fundamental desire to build something meaningful with someone who valued me, that wasn't wrong. The execution was catastrophically flawed, but the desire was human." His warning to others considering international relationships or investments remains consistent. Verify everything independently. Hire local investigators. Confirm identities through official channels. Never send large amounts of money based solely on documents, photos, or video calls. If someone resists third-party verification, that's your answer. Legitimate opportunities and genuine partners welcome verification because they have nothing to hide. 3 years after Angel disappeared with his money, Steve still sometimes dreams about the clinic. In these dreams, it exists a clean, functional facility serving poor families in Tondo, with Angel working as a dedicated physician and Steve managing operations. He wakes from these dreams to the reality of his Cebu apartment, the fantasy dissolving into the recognition that none of it was ever real, except the extraction of his wealth. The man Steve used to be confident, trusting, capable of hope and risk was destroyed along with his savings. What remains is a cautious, withdrawn survivor who exists in permanent aftermath, warning others while acknowledging his own inability to recover. "I didn't lose my money in the Philippines," Steve says during interviews and support group meetings, using the phrase that has become his signature closing. "I lost the man I used to be. The money was just numbers, but the capacity to trust, to hope, to believe in connection and purpose, those were the real losses. And unlike money, those can't be recovered or rebuilt." Steve Gallagher survives in exile, a warning voice in the darkness, a cautionary tale for those who follow. The clinic that never existed consumed not just his savings but his identity, his hope, and his future. What remains is a man who warns others, while privately knowing that warnings rarely work, that lonely people will continue to believe in beautiful lies because the alternative is accepting that meaningful connection may be impossible, and that acceptance is more painful than any financial loss.